So I'm studying this portion of archetypes and Jungian psychology and mind control. And I know the whole point of mind control and Jungian psychology, which is using archetypes that are a type of human programming that points out how people and systems and even biochemistry complement each other or conflict with each other. And so, I mean, I study even my own relationships in my world, why it is that there is a biochemical conflict with certain people and why there is a biochemical complement with certain people. And yes, it has to do with not only the archetypes. What are archetypes? Well, there are 17 different characters or elements that humans are programmed to represent. And it's reinforced by the media, by fairy tales, by books and newspapers and politics, religion, and science. What are these type of archetypes? Well, I know there are at least two that I'm going to discuss in my book as far as the predator and prey type of syndrome. What else? The victim abuser archetype, which is the same thing. And then there's other archetypes that I'm not going to go into too much because that would be really, really lengthy. But I could probably go over them right now so you kind of see the bigger picture. And then you can see why it is that obviously you gravitate towards Trump, because you feel like you've been abused and he seems like the hero, the knight in shining armor. And so here are some archetype examples, some characters. So character archetypes, like the bully who intimidates others. There's the creature of nightmare that threatens the hero's life. The damsel in distress, the hero that rescues her. Okay, the devil figure tempts the hero. The dreamer wants to be something else. The evil genius seeks revenge and hates everybody. The friendly beast assists the hero. The hero, main character who may fulfill a task or bring justice. So if you watch different movies and you read different stories, whether it's based upon reality or based upon fantasy, you're going to see all these different characters come, to surface. And that is the elements of a story, okay, which makes things entertaining. So the initiates needs training to become heroes. The martyr willing to die for a cause. Mentors train and counsel the initiates. So you've seen the Hunger Games and all the different Elysium and all these different futuristic battles between good and evil. I mean, these are all very familiar to me. The outcast, exiled for a crime and become a wanderer. Well, this is the Scarlet Letter and people who are deemed and dubbed as witches, right? The star-crossed lovers. The pair usually meets tragedy. Survivor, never gives up and always pulls through. That's why I've been dubbed as a survivor by my own mother, who is a Jungian psychologist. Never gives up and always pulls through. Despite everything that I've been through in my life, I never give up and I always pull through. So I've had a spell being cast upon me to survive any situation, which I guess is a good thing. But dang it, at some point you gotta stop surviving and you have to thrive, right? The temptress. So then this is where I also apply this program. It's a beautiful woman who seduces the hero. Okay, a lot of you that are into plastic surgery, are into tantric sex and all these different things, maybe you're in the porn industry, you probably are taking on the archetype of a temptress, okay? What your behaviors are not original. They're not something that you think you've organically come to be. You've been programmed to be all of these different characters in the elements of archetypes. Tyrant wants to be in charge. Well, some of you think that Trump is that, but some of you on your own page wants to be in charge of your page. Well, you have every right to, right? The wizard has special powers, okay? And so those are, the character archetypes in literature, such as the William Shakespeare. And so that's why they teach you Shakespeare in college, in literature. in college, because they want to reinforce these types of archetypes, of which then you're going to act out in your regular life. So you're seeing like your whole society, what you do, who you are attracted to is based upon what archetype you fit. Okay, and then they reinforce that. And so there's the whole thing with Romeo and Juliet, situation archetypes. Here you go. The battle of good and evil. Okay, so if you watch movies that have to do with good and evil, oh my God, this is, totally obvious. I mean, no different than antibodies versus prostaglandins, right? That's an archetype that's very easy, and it's a story of duality that I can at least relate to my community on that level, because we do live in a world of archetypes of this duality. Some of them are false dichotomies, and there's factual duality. Death and rebirth shows the circle of life. These are situation archetypes, right? Innate wisdom versus educated stupidity. Well, here we go. The whole truther community, right? Oh yeah, you're so educated because you're brainwashed. You're being indoctrinated. So that's part of even in my book about education is indoctrination. And then you have innate wisdom based upon your biochemistry. And even innate wisdom isn't always exactly life promoting, because you can have innate wisdom that people die because that's your biochemistry. The initiation, this is in situation archetypes. The initiation, a character matures and takes responsibility. Oh yeah, some of you are looking at your past, you're like, okay, now I want to mature and take responsibility. And I've done that. I've seen the switch of when I was like this free floating spirit that kind of did what she wanted, and then I've looked at my credit report, I'm like, oh my God, my credit report sucked, and I've wanted to take on my credit report. So then at some point I noticed a switch of me from being a child who was carefree to then now taking part in the mainstream of taking care of business. Okay, so the hero's journey. The hero confronts trials along the way. Well, yeah, I mean, you're hearing my story, how I've confronted the trials along my way of Jilly Juice and where I am today, and my dealing with Dr. Phil and all the different trolls that are trying to destroy me, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you're going to see these elements of archetypes even within my book, because my book is telling you a story of my journey, but it has a very main point, which is the promotion of life and the chemistry of life. But I still, to make it entertaining to where you're wanting to read it, you're going to see elements of situational archetypes, okay? Because if it was just facts, it would be boring and you wouldn't want to read it, because all facts are just nouns that aren't anything but a noun. So there is no entertainment or gravitation towards just a word like antibody or just a word like prostaglandins. Now you have to express your position around it, which then has the different adjectives and different prepositions and verbs to then give you the emotional pull on what it is I'm trying to get across. And that's so different than any article out there that you read, okay? The magic weapon. The hero has the ability to use this to be successful in the quest or prove he or she has the chosen one. Oh my lordy. Rags to riches. A character rises from poor luck or station to a higher one. Oh lordy. Riches to rags. A character falls from their station. So like the rise and fall, like the thing with America, the rise of America, and how we're becoming like the most powerful nation on the land to now we're being taken down. So we're actually experiencing a type of archetypal situation such as from riches to rags. I mean, look at the fall of the economy. Our president acting like an ass in this debate with the vice president. It's like, come on. This is like so like clockwork, okay? Nature versus mechanistic world. This has nature as being good and technology as bad. Well, what is nature? Nature and technology are actually really one and the same, and they're not that different. It's just it's what your intention is behind nature and what constituents you're putting together to create metal versus something that's a soft metal. Hard metal versus soft metal. That's what nature versus mechanistic is soft metals versus hard metals. Okay, big whoop. The quest. The search for someone or something. Okay, some of you are on the quest for a man and you're looking for the right man, and so your Facebook story tells everyone that yes, you're doing everything you can to find a man. The task, something that must be done. Well, yeah, that's an obvious, very. Then there's situation archetypes in literature, like J.R.R. Tolkien, The Lord of the Rings, which is obviously seems like a story that you could put exactly around this COVID-19. The one antibody to rule them all. The one ring to rule them all. Wow. You're seeing it right here. Setting archetypes. Okay, have you ever read a horror story that happened in the middle of the day? Probably not very often. So the dark and scary nights tend to be where horror movies take place. So here you go. Some examples of setting archetypes include, and this would be elements of a story as well as your life, okay? The garden. Oh, some of you, they're all about the garden, and you're all ethereal, and you're doing your organic garden. You're wearing flowing robes and filmy chiffon, and you have a baby that has like little capes on her, and she's so cute, and has been, filtered through so many different filters. The baby doesn't even look real anymore. And so the garden symbolized love and fertility. And there's many of you on there, the crunchy mamas that they used to go and attack me a couple years ago. They would exactly fit that archetype of the garden of love and fertility. The forest can be a wild place of danger and beasts. It also can be a place to reconnect with nature. Well, some of you, they're all into like the nature and all this stuff, and yes, you can have a horror movie where you have beasts in the forest, and I've seen it like Hansel and Gretel. Or you can have someone's like, oh yes, I'm going to be now next to nature and dive into these cold pools naked and tell you how it's healing me, and oh, I've seen all of those archetypes all over my Facebook, okay? And they're the ones that are these bioenergetic gurus that play in the forest, and they channel these archetypes, and then you as a person will gravitate towards that because that's what you've been programmed to do on some level. The river. Water symbolizes life, and the river can show life's journeys or boundaries. Well, yeah, I mean, hey, but no different than the river runs through it. All these different movies that take place on water, on waterways and water features and whatever, okay? The sea can be both good and evil with dangers and treasures. It can also show infinity. Well, that makes sense. I've heard about archetypes where if you dream about the ocean, you're dreaming about all the different, unpredictable things about the ocean, and it could be a treasure, it could be a danger, just based upon, what's going on, what hormone is being expressed at the time. The island symbolizes isolation. Well, look, Tom Hanks, which you know about his past maybe, and him moving off to Greece, and then that movie where he was stuck on an island, and FedEx was the company he worked for, and how he got by with himself and playing with a volleyball or something. The mountain. Okay, yeah, I see people talking, you guys are out there in the mountains and you're climbing, can represent you're in a spiritual journey. These people that go through this formula of life where they graduate high school, and then before they go to college, they take maybe a year or 6 months sabbatical to the mountains or to Europe. And they're like, oh yes, I'm so spiritual. I'm going to the mountains and skiing and doing all this stuff. So you can see how our society has programmed our children to take on some of these setting archetypes, and then elicit like they are enlightened and ethereal and different, when really you've been programmed, okay, by psychology, psychotherapy. I mean, it's very, very predictable. The wasteland, a place for cleansing and finding inner strength. Well, yeah, okay, like Dune and any of these books that have a setting of a dystopian type of theme to it. The tower, well, yeah, the two towers represents worship or power. So, the archetype of the two towers in 9/11 being destroyed, that right there should tell you something, that not everything is organic. Some things were actually probably, I would say, intentional. And when someone talks about 9/11 was an inside job, and then you have the two towers being the symbol of American power being completely decimated from the ground up with thermite or thermo whatever, okay, and then you have the Tower of Babel, as well as then the two towers in the Lord of the Rings, okay, and then the small town. This is where everyone knows everyone and judges them, so it represents intolerance. Well, yeah, the small town. Well, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with this. I mean, I went from a big city like California, a big city like California, in a suburban city, lived in San Francisco, LA for a minute, and now I've moved to a very small town in the middle of Ohio. And I would say yes, it definitely represents that archetype where everyone knows everybody, because I'm seeing so many connections to my husband's friends and family and people, and it's just like, like 1 degree, half a degree of separation. And then, yes, definitely, I know I get judged because I've come from California in a setting of a small town like, Ohio, in a town I live in Ohio. And yeah, I definitely went through the judgment phase where people were judging me. And I wasn't obviously hiding where I was and where I came from. So it's like it is what it is. But that, it makes sense. I could see that. So yes, movies that do have a background with a small town and someone trying to escape a small town to go to a big city where it's more tolerant, where you can be yourself and you're not being judged. Yeah, I mean that's like when people who are gay in a small town, they move to like San Francisco because it's where you can kind of hide as well as be yourself without somebody judging you. So yeah, absolutely, we are living out our archetypes. Setting archetypes in literature. Lord of the Flies. Okay, the boys are isolated on an island, chased by dangers in the forest, safe by a lagoon, and often climb the mountains to light the signal fire. Okay, symbolic archetypes. Light, dark, water. I mean, you can see, this is some interesting stuff. And so I'm going to post this. I'll go over this. This symbolic archetype: light, hope or renewal; dark, despair or ignorance; water, birth and life; haven, safety; wilderness, danger; fire, knowledge and rebirth; ice, death and ignorance. That's like the yin and the yang, right? Black, evil, mystery; red, passion, blood; green, the earth, growth; and then white, purity, peace, innocent. And that's why you wear white at a wedding. You don't wear black at a wedding. Well, some you will. The bride, well, you do kind of a duality of both. Sometimes some people break some of the laws, and that's okay. But yes, there's definitely symbols and signs that take on these specific characteristics that let people know what it is they're trying to elicit, because they're tapping into your programming, the archetypes that you've been programmed through education, through books, through media, through your parents. Okay, and so nothing is organic in our society. So white, purity, peace, innocence. 3, Trinity: mind, body, mind, and spirit. Okay. 4 seasons, elements. Square: stability, right? When things are 2, but 3, they're like, 2's a company, 3's a crowd type of thing, right? Circle: haven, perfection, eternity. Spiral: cosmic motion and growth. Clouds: mystery, rain, change, lightning, inspiration. Hourglass: time passing. Heart equals love. So that's like the emojis. That's all the different signs and symbols that you see just in marketing. So you have to understand that marketing and companies and even just what you're being taught in school takes on all these archetypes. And this is the key to your existence in what you perceive as your reality, and you think it's organic and you think you're being new and different. No, you're being recycled with the same script. Okay? And that's what I'm trying to get across with with Jelly Juice, is trying to deprogram you from this specific script. So this has been definitely very interesting. All right, bye. Talk to you later. Bye.